What's going on, everybody? Hello, Austin and Kayla. Well, as you can see, got a little bit different of a ride for you today. We're actually in the car and we're heading up a beautiful highway to a location called Lake Barchis. A little bit different, but I wanted to travel a little bit further away. Wanted to get up to about 1,300 feet. So I hope that you guys can enjoy this. Just like I hope you enjoyed the last episode, the 3 special words. Statistically, the first 48 hours, that video was my fastest growing video, so I appreciate all the support, and I really appreciate everyone who's watching and subscribing and sending the messages, so thanks so much. So today I'm gonna do something a little bit different with the ride. Obviously we're in the car, but I want to tell you a story, and the reason I want to tell you this story is because of the effect that it had and still has on me, even to this day. I'm going to take you back to about 1989, 1990, and my dad did something that I will never forget, and I'd never heard of it, and I still don't think I've ever heard about it or heard of it, but he borrowed some land from his one and only friend that I ever knew. His name was Charlie, and he got quite a bit of land, so much that we were able to divide it up into a few sections, and he was able to enjoy a hobby. He started beekeeping. He built some beehives, and he worked his bees all the time. We also had a melon patch and a garden where we grew tomatoes. And through those sections, we also had some dirt bike tracks that we were able to ride through. And I have to be honest with you, I can still remember riding the motorcycle on the trails. I can remember working in the garden, and the impact that this had on me is something that I'm never going to forget. So what I want to talk about is selling tomatoes. And I remember initially when Dad pitched the idea to me, you can imagine a 13, 14-year-old young man. It's pretty hard to motivate and inspire and get them to want to perform anything that sounds like manual labor. But my dad picked the golden ticket, and he told me that he wanted to help me come up with some money to purchase my first car. And it was going to be a lot of work, and it was going to take a lot of dedication, but he knew that I could do it. And I wasn't too excited about it, as you can imagine, but when he said money for a car, those words actually did motivate me. I can't say that I was always the best gardener, or I can't say that I was happy about getting up and going out and pulling weeds or planting plants or doing whatever, but the end result was life-changing. So to tell you a little bit more about the garden, I would say it was probably a half acre or so. So much so that we were able to plant about 50 tomato plants. And I didn't know at the time, but 50 tomato plants is a lot of tomatoes. But my dad told me what we were going to do is we were going to plant these tomatoes and we were going to tend to them, and then we were going to sell them at the house. And not ever having a job in my entire life, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. But I did go out and help him tend to the garden and pull the weeds, and eventually the tomato plants started producing tomatoes. And as you can imagine, with that many tomato plants, they were pretty much non-stop. But when we first started, what we would do is we would pick the tomatoes and we'd bring them back to our house, and I had a little picnic table that was set up out by the road, and we had this little very small scale, and we started selling tomatoes for about 10 cents a pound. And I didn't know this at the time, but my dad did that on purpose basically because he knew what the price of tomatoes was, and we were selling them cheaper than people could buy them in the grocery store. So as you can imagine, once one person started buying the tomatoes, they became repeat customers because the tomatoes were good and they were cheap. So our little tomato stand caught on really quick in our town, so much to the point that we would have people lined up out in front of our house to buy the tomatoes. So it was pretty easy to forget about all the work when I was making money and I was having fun doing it. And it was funny talking to the people, and it was almost like a lemonade stand, but selling tomatoes. And eventually the tomato plant started producing so much that we had to add more tables to put the tomatoes on. And when we did that, we raised the price a little bit, and I think we took them up to 10-15 cents a pound, and everything was going really, really well. I don't ever remember throwing any tomatoes away, if that tells you how good we were selling them. And maybe my dad did something with them, but I just thought it was cool that he kind of knew how to manage it, and how he was teaching me to be responsible with the money. He was also teaching me to be responsible with the products that we had, and then obviously the hard work aspect of it was really cool. And as I got a little bit older, I think I did this for 2 or 3 summers. I don't really remember too much, but on the second summer, we were doing really well, so much to the point that we then moved our tomato stand up on the porch because we would have more room for people to walk around and choose their tomatoes. We had some furniture up there and we could use those almost like tables and line the tomatoes up on them. And we ended up buying a better scale, so it was a little bit more accurate. Honestly, I feel like we were making pretty good money for selling tomatoes at 15 cents a pound, and we were selling all of them. So I have to admit, I kind of started losing interest in it, but my dad had already thought through what we were going to do, and the fact that we had built up this clientele, if you will, of people to come back and keep buying the tomatoes. What we ended up doing was we put a box on the front porch, and the box had a lock on it, and people would come up, they would pick their tomatoes from our selection, they would put them in a bag, they would weigh them themselves, and then they would just leave the money in the box. And it was very, very low maintenance. And honestly, it got to the point where we were just picking tomatoes and putting them on the porch and walking away, and then we'd collect the money at the end of the day or a couple days down the road, and we were still making halfway decent money on it. And as I look back now, Dad was very strategic, because when we put the box on the porch, we raised the price to $1/4 a pound. And I never really thought much about that as it was going on, because I knew that we were selling tomatoes, and I think that people would buy tomatoes no matter what because they liked our tomatoes. But I think my dad knew that we weren't going to be tending to them like we were, so he was just trying to see who would pay and what they would pay for the tomatoes. So it was pretty awesome. Retrospectively, obviously, now looking back, I think, in all honesty, Dad would have probably just gave the tomatoes away to anybody that needed them, because that was just the kind of guy he was. But the lessons he taught me throughout that whole process were definitely hard work, and then obviously a little bit of business management and money management and real world life experience. And it was funny to me when I was coming up with this episode, thinking back, I remember how we decided to leave the tomatoes on the porch, and it wasn't some big blowout, where we're saying we're not going to have our business anymore. It was just him saying, I'm going to leave the tomatoes out there. If you want to work them, you can work them. He never told me, if you don't work them, you're not going to have any money. He just told me, hey, they're still going to be there, and you can still continue to use this as an opportunity for you to come up with money for your car. But the bottom line is Dad knew everyone loved the tomatoes. So I think it was definitely kind of cool, and it was a great life lesson for me that I still kind of think through today. I don't ever look at a tomato without really thinking about my dad, just because we put so much time and energy and effort into making that successful. And we also ended up growing some other vegetables. We had peppers and green beans, and obviously we had melons and all that kind of stuff. So it was pretty awesome, and I think the memory of it is even more awesome now. So a little bit more of story time today, but I hope you can take away how Dad motivated me to do something, and he taught me how to do something with selling the tomatoes, and he really made an impact on my life. And I know that this story probably is pretty funny to you guys. I'm just sitting here talking about selling tomatoes, but I think selling tomatoes is the story, but creating the memory is the lesson. And he went out of his way to create those memories with me, and I'll forever be grateful for those type of things. So thanks again for listening. Thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoy how beautiful this ride really is. I got to give a special shout out this week to Dr. Jan Colton. From the moment that I started posting videos, she's been one of the first ones to like it. She sent me a couple messages, and they really mean the world to me. So thanks so much, Doc. I appreciate your support. And thanks to you guys too for watching and listening and supporting me. It's been awesome. This is the 9th episode, and I've had so much fun doing the whole entire thing. So thanks for riding with me today.